Hey everybody, it's Alexander Dahl with Manifest Brutality again. Today I was able to line up another interview as I kind of promised that I would keep doing that instead of the other discussion type videos. So I do have another interview. Also, I've been able to kind of push these into more of a podcast, so they're available through Anchor, and soon they'll be available through all the major podcast distributors. It's still under the Manifest Brutality name, so it's the Manifest Brutality concept, and it's just the audio taken directly from the videos. So there's not really a benefit to one way or the other. It's just how comfortable you are digesting the content. So with that being said, we'll just jump into the interview. All right, bye. All right, I'm here with Will Maravelas. He was one of the people that reached out to me about looking for musicians to interview. I got him on the line, and so I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hey everybody, my name is Will Maravelas. I am the guitarist for Coffin Rights, for Plague of Stars, a whole slew of other projects. I'm also the owner of 1459 Studios in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Awesome. So the general area that I looked in to look for musicians was in Minneapolis, because that's also where I am.
Sure.
Through growing up, my process of looking for music and playing with musicians has been somewhat complicated. Why don't you kind of give us the rundown about how you got into music? What kind of was that linchpin moment in your childhood where you're just like, I need to be doing that?
Sure. I remember that pretty vividly, actually. There are two specific moments and then one movement that I kind of consider myself to be lucky enough to grow up in at the time. So the first moment I remember with music is I was traveling with my dad. My dad is he's a sales guy. You know, he travels for a living and that kind of thing. And occasionally when I was a kid, he would take myself and my sister, or sometimes just me, sometimes the whole family with my mom and all that. But I remember one specific situation. I was traveling with him. We were on our way to Chicago or Minneapolis. I don't remember which. But he was listening to music. And I fell asleep in the car because it was late night. And I woke up and I heard this resonating voice and this dark guitar coming out of the cassette player.
Nice.
And I remember, I want to say I was like 8 or 9. It's pretty young. And I remember asking my dad what that was, and he goes, "Oh, this is heavy metal."
Yes.
and he wasn't super into, metal music. I'm very much into it, but that band was Black Sabbath.
Sure.
And I remember that pretty vividly from being a kid, and it was probably the Paranoid cassette, I'm sure. But I just remember kind of going, "What is this? I'm not familiar with this. This is not the stuff I heard on, FM radio when I was a kid growing up." The other moment that kind of made me go, so that kind of got me into music, I suppose, and kind of going, "Oh, music's cool. What else you got?" And then show me a lot of other stuff.
Kind of showed you the rainbow that's out there.
Yeah. I mean, like we saw, like, I'd listen to like Jimi Hendrix or Jethro Tull or Led Zeppelin or I'm trying to think of some of the like Cat Stevens, even things like that.
Sure.
That's stuff that my dad listened to, and I just kind of really got drawn to guitar-based music in general. And then I was kind of into music already at that point, and I was like, young childhood. I started playing guitar pretty young. But I remember watching Austin City Limits on PBS. I just was floating through the television on a Saturday night, and back in I'm showing my age here. I'm 36, but I'm showing my age. There wasn't many channels then. It was like, maybe like 10, 15 channels at the time. Right. And so I'm just switching through and I'm going, "Oh, what's this? There's a music program on PBS. It's called Austin City Limits. That's kind of cool." So I just leave it on and turn it on. And there's this crazy good blues guitar player, named Steve Ray Vaughan.
Sure.
And watching him play and just the passion that he played with, and just the strength and the tenacity that you could just kind of hear when he would play guitar that changed me and made me just go, I want to do that.
Sure.
I want to play guitar. And that's what kind of got me into being a musician. And I bought my first guitar, I think I was 11, I believe, at the time. So I just bought a guitar from a pawn shop.
I would suppose if there's any guitarist out there to really kind of show you what can be done, it would be Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah, I mean, it's like just iconic on so many levels. I'm like the guy, he was playing, he was known as a blues guitarist, but the guy he was so much more than that.
Yeah, he could pretty much do whatever he wanted to do. So, going through school and like through your teenage years, were you in like concert band or anything, or did you just kind of start looking for like the garage band, quote unquote, setup?
Sure. Yeah. Basements for us, because it was Wisconsin, it was cold.
Sure.
But I wanted to do a band kind of right away. And I started kind of figuring out, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, like doing a band right away, going, oh, who plays drums in my high school area, or in the city or whatever. And just kind of.
And you and I are about the same age, so I can definitely relate to that. Growing up at that period of time and being a teenager, there wasn't Craigslist. The internet was in its infancy. It was hard to really connect and reach out and look for other musicians at that time.
Absolutely. And I lived in it's like La Crosse, where I'm from, La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I'm a Minneapolis transplant, but the La Crosse, Wisconsin, where I grew up, had a much bigger music scene than you would think of, because there was actually a all ages club there that actually kind of catered to younger bands.
Sure.
And younger local bands, that kind of thing. But they had great nationals too. I can tell you the bands that I've seen with 12 other people that would just blow your mind. But I mean, as far as that went, I just started kind of figuring out who played and just talk to people and go, what kind of music do you want to play? And, what kind of stuff are you into? And just kind of figured out the way through it. It was, all of us were all, at that time, fairly self-taught. Like I would have killed for something like YouTube when I was a kid.
Right.
I would have just, if that was how I could have learned how to play guitar, I would have been like, I'd be a way better guitar player. So that was kind of the process, was just look for people. I was in band in middle school for like 6 months, and it's nothing against doing band at all. It just wasn't for me.
Sure.
It didn't appeal to me in any fashion. It was too rigid. In many respects, the people that were teaching it were, to be honest, fairly closed-minded.
Sure.
So it didn't really. It's the stuff that appealed to me, people viewed as not being music, even stuff like blues and classic rock and things like that. I mean, when I was growing up, it's like people still went, oh, that's just noise and that kind of thing. It's like, let alone the thrash metal that I love listening to and all that.
So what was it to get into a bigger music scene that brought you to Minneapolis, or was it something outside of that?
Yeah, it very much was the purpose of music for me, and what actually brought me up here was, and I moved up here when I was 23.
Okay.
So I've been here quite a while now. But the music scene back at home was, I guess, for what I wanted to do, because I was getting into recording at that time. I worked at a recording studio in my hometown. And I just kind of said, well, if I want to do this on a larger scale, I need to move someplace where it's just kind of more happening, if you will. And
sure.
even though La Crosse was a vibrant, music community for being a small town, there wasn't a whole lot going on there. So moving up here, it was like, oh, there's so many bands and there's so many clubs and there's so many bars and there's just so many recording studios and there's just so much opportunity.
Yep.
And I just kind of looked at that and said, well, and I had already been playing up here for a while. Even before I moved, my bands were playing shows up here for years at that point. And,
sure.
and I knew a lot of the people up here already. So it just kind of seemed like a natural step to just, give it a go and move up here.
I assume there were bands you were in prior to the two that you said that you're currently in. How was your process of looking for other musicians to play with when you like first moved up to Minneapolis and you're like, okay, it's time to get in here and do this?
Sure. The funny thing is, one of the things that brought me up here was I was in a band. I was in a band called And Hope to Die. It's a footnote. Not too many people really know who that band is. Mm-hmm. But I was in a band up here already at that point, and I had been traveling from Wisconsin. Every weekend I had been coming up for practice for about a year and a half already. Okay. My good friend Aaron, who's also in Plague of Stars with me, he moved up to. He was from Winona originally, which is 20 minutes from La Crosse. So me and him grew up together playing in bands and playing shows together. He had moved to the Twin Cities already. So him and I started a new band together. And the rest of the band, sans the singer and me, all lived up here. And the singer and me would just travel up from Wisconsin. Sure. And I just decided, I woke up one morning, in my 20s and kind of said, I really don't like living here and living in Wisconsin anymore. I don't really like my job. My band's in Minneapolis and my girlfriend at the time was in Minneapolis. And I'm just kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to move to Minneapolis and just see how it goes. Sure. And within about a month of moving here, my band broke up. Me and my girlfriend broke up. I had no place to live, but it worked out. Right. That's good. Yeah. So it's just kind of funny.
So that whole process kind of immediately threw you into playing with at least Plague of Stars. Yeah. So it doesn't seem like you kind of had too much of a challenging time dealing with auditioning with other musicians, but you did mention that you run your own studio. How often do you have musicians come into your studio that you've never met before that you kind of like have a bit of tension at first to get them into the modality of working?
Just I guess for the lack of a better way to put it, I'm kind of a seasoned musician up here now for, without sounding too real, hopefully not sounding too ridiculous, but, sure. Because of I've been involved in the music scene now for quite some time. I was in I guess, sort of well-known band, regionally speaking. I was in a death metal band called We Are Legion. We were a band for, 10 years plus. Being that was a metal band, all my kind of first clients were naturally my friends, it's sure. People that I knew from the music scene. And, I don't want this to sound wrong, but the metal scene up here is fairly incestuous in the sense that, everybody up here has been in a band with somebody else at some point.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of like this group of like 25 people, or it's small. I bet they just keep rotating from one band to another. One band breaks up, that this group gets together with this other people from this group and start a new group. And
yeah, it really is like you say. It's 25 people that are all in 10 different bands together.
Yeah, it's crazy. And
there was I forget who it was I was talking to, but it's maybe a few months ago I was talking to somebody about that exact thing, and we kind of came to the conclusion that there's probably a subconscious thing there where they're trying to like artificially force the dynamic to actually make something that might take off.
That's entirely possible. I'm like the goal for me with music, I mean, like I'm pretty realistic, when it comes to the business of music, if you will. My whole thing with music has been twofold. I'm like going, if I ever wanted to quote unquote make a living and or make any kind of actual income with doing music, that's truthfully on the business side. That's owning a studio, that's owning a club, that's being a booking agent, that's being a manager, that whole thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not on the talent side.
No, it's not. And so I basically got into recording because that was a creative outlet where I could still make a couple of bucks. And that's what got me into recording. From the musician performance, creative side of things of playing in bands, my goal has always been, hey, if I break even, I'm winning.
Right.
And if anything beyond that happens, then that's just a bonus.
Right.
And that's kind of the way I've always approached, playing music. And that's taken a lot of pressure off of, with music for me, like the whole idea of being forced to create. I can create because I want to and because I can with other people who feel the same way. Now, that isn't to say that I would be, if Metal Blade or Earache or some great label came up and said, hey, we want, to sign your band and, we want you guys to, make an album and do that kind of thing. I'm not saying I'm against that by any means.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm pretty realistic and just go, look, I'm going to make music that I enjoy making and playing with my friends. And if other people like it, then that's awesome, and that's total bonus.
There's that old stigma that musicians who listen to their own music kind of like get a lot of shit because it like outwardly looks kind of pretentious. But fundamentally, why wouldn't you make music that you want to listen to? Right.
I think that especially from the recording spot, because I record my own bands, I have to listen to these songs over and over and over again. Yep. I'd like to create something that I think is enjoyable to listen to.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that the stuff that I write or anything is better than the next guy. In fact, I don't feel that way at all. But as far as the creative outlet goes, it's music I enjoy liking, and it's an amalgamation of all the different things that I like to listen to. I'm like, you can hear blues influence in our songs. You can hear thrash metal influence in our songs, even though Coffin Rights is a death metal band. You can hear rock and roll influences in Plague of Stars, even though Plague of Stars is a gothic metal band. It's that thing that just goes, if it works and it fits and it's fun, then just do it, and
when I told my wife that I was interviewing you, she's like, oh, I know them. And I was like, oh, really? Okay.
Cool. Yeah. Well, good. That means we're doing something right.
Yep, absolutely. So, with the height that you've actually achieved in your own way that you weigh your own accomplishments, tell me a story about either playing live or in studio about something that happened that sticks in your memory that you would define as one of a standout moment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know. Whenever I ask this question, it's like so on the spot.
I think a really kind of cool moment for me. There's been a lot of them, but through the recording aspect of things, I've recorded a lot of local, regional, out of state bands, that kind of thing. I've also had the opportunity to work with some national recording artists and international recording artists, which has been pretty cool. I've made, I made another band that's a studio project called Chalice of Suffering. That's literally musicians from all over the world. And that's a pretty cool experience too. But I think one of the standout moments for me was, I've recorded I refer to as an 80s icon, the musician Thor.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. I have been involved in his last 4 albums.
Cool.
One I actually played drums and guitar on. Another one I played a guitar solo. I play something on all of them, but I've recorded 2 to 3 songs for the last couple albums, and then a full album a couple albums ago.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so his live band consists of a couple of guys that I've known for a long time that are from the Twin Cities. Tom Croxton is his drummer. Tom was in Impaler. Tom's currently in Hex Vortices.
Okay.
Tom was in Elder God. He was in he's been in so many bands. He's gonna if I started trying to think about all of them, I'd still forget 20. But Tom's great. He's and like I said, he's from the cities. John Leibel, another good buddy of mine. He is the guitar player. He was in Dawn of Valor and Pistol Whip, been in a bunch of other bands. And then Ted Jedlicki, the bass player, lives out in Denver now, but he's originally from the Twin Cities. Him and John are besties, if you will. And he's the bass player in the live band. And then the second live guitarist is kind of always floating. So in other words, it just kind of depends on who can do the tour or who can do the show or, anything like that when there is, Thor shows that happen. The tours are usually fairly short. I mean, John Mikey Thor is from Vancouver. So usually they're like a, East Coast, West Coast type tour, some Midwestern dates, that kind of thing. But after the last record I did with them, which was previous to the latest one that just came out a couple of months ago, which I also had some songs on, but they ended up having their other longtime guitar player, Matt, who's Matt McNally, who's also from the Twin Cities, couldn't do a run of shows with them.
Okay.
And so John basically came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do a couple shows with Thor?" And I'm like, "Yeah, if we can make the schedule work, that sounds like fun. Where are we going?" And he goes, "Oh, we're gonna go play the Whiskey a Go Go in Los Angeles, and I'm like, and like a bunch of other places." And I'm like, "Going, wait a second, we're gonna go play the Whiskey in Los Angeles."
Wow, that's cool.
Like this is like places where I've seen tons of VHS tapes and stuff like that of bands playing there growing up. You're talking about the place that, Guns N' Roses started and Motley Crue started and, tons of other. Yeah.
It's like our first Ave. Yeah.
Yeah. It's legendary, and
so I'm going to interject real quick. So if you've been involved with Thor for the past several of his records, did you have any part in the documentary that was done about him a couple years ago?
Yes.
Nice.
They had on his Hammer of the Gods album. There was the first documentary, and then there was the second documentary, which came out with the Hammer of the Gods record. The first copy of the record, the deluxe version, came with the documentary, with the CD as well. And then obviously that just got released on vinyl too, so I'm really excited to get a vinyl for my wall too.
And what participation did you have with it?
So the Hammer of the Gods record is the second record I did with Thor, and there were 5 songs on that record that I did, and then there were an additional 5 songs that were recorded in Canada. Awesome. With another engineer.
Very cool.
And I can't remember Kevin's last name, and I feel like such a heel for that, but Kevin is the other engineer that helped with that record.
If you remember it within the next few days, you can message it to me and I'll put it in the description.
I will. But in that record, I had 2 guitar solos on that record. And then Tom was a full-fledged member by that point, so he played drums on that record. So Tom wasn't in the band yet for the Beyond the Pain Barrier record, which was the first record. So I actually played drums on that record too.
Very cool.
Tom's a way better drummer than I am. So he's definitely the man. So.
Cool. That was some really good conversation and a very cool story. I like to give the opportunity for you to do like your social media plugs, promote anything you have coming up or that you want to get out there. And then I always like to let the person I'm interviewing have the last word, just put a message out that you want to be, your statement. So why don't you give me your plugs and then I'll give you the last word.
Okay, cool. So basic plugs are if you like death metal, go find Coffin Rights on various social media platforms. It's 2 words, Coffin, COFFINRITES. And if you like doom, death metal, gothic stuff, that happens to be fronted by a really, really well established female vocalist. That's my other band, Plague of Stars. Plague of Stars, 3 words. Various social platforms. You can find my studio online, 1459 Studios. You can reach me at any point. I welcome bands from all over the world. I welcome bands digitally as well. I've done plenty of mix and masters for bands all over the world, so you don't have to be local to come hang out. And then check out my doom metal band as well, Chalice of Suffering. And yeah, make music, have fun.